Back when I posted this video, it did over 1 million views. Watch it and I'll tell you what happens next. I live in a very lavish lifestyle. I was traveling first class everywhere. I had bought a penthouse in New York City. I bought a villa in Spain. I had an apartment in Spain. And I had this big mansion in Dublin. Living my best life at 35 years of age.
Wow.
It's like everything I touched was turning to gold. And you start to think that you are infallible. That is exactly what happened to me. I had made so much money in such a short space of time. I thought another 5 years from now, like my portfolio will hit 100 million. I'm going to be stinking rich. And so
by the age of 40.
By the age of 40, I'm going to absolutely have it made. And so why delay the lifestyle? Started to enjoy all of the trappings of wealth by living off of the debt that the banks were able to kind of give you very easily. Buy something for $1 million, sell it for $2.5 million like a year later. It was that easy at the time. 2008 came along just after I had committed to the biggest project that I had ever done, 42 million for a shopping center in the south of Spain. A few months after I signed the deal, Lehman Brothers collapses. At the peak of the last boom, my real estate portfolio was valued at over 65 million euro. Just 2 years later, my net worth fell to 16 million negative. Yeah, that's right, negative. 16 million underwater. Believe it or not, that wasn't the worst part. The bank actually took the family home. And when it did that, it was the final straw and my marriage came to an end. I ended up having to ask my brother for some help. And I moved into an empty rental property he had, and I stayed there rent-free until I got back on my feet. Now, that clip that you've just watched was from a 45-minute interview I did in Dubai with my friend and performance coach, Jean Pierre De Villiers. We call him JP. That clip went absolutely viral, completely blew up, and over 1 million views, hundreds of comments. And a huge number of those comments are actually asking the question, what happened next? And so today I'm going to share with you that full interview, entire 45 minutes, how I built a fortune, how I lost a fortune, and the promise I made to my late father on his deathbed that helped me push through all the difficulty. Enjoy.
Tell them a bit about you, your background, and the most transformational period of your life, which to so many is an incredible inspirational story about overcoming adversity.
Well, let's go back a little bit in time. And when I was in school, if we go way back, at 15 years of age, my dad bought flights for us to go to New York City. It was a family holiday. We were actually going to go and visit Disney World in Florida, but he flew to New York, and then we stayed a few days in New York, and then we flew down to Florida. And a little bit like Dubai does for me, tall buildings, impressive architecture. I didn't know this at the time, but when I was 15 years of age, I was in New York City. And the Empire State Building, the World Trade Center, all of these like big, huge buildings, I was absolutely blown away by the energy that it gave me. I saw all these towers. I was like, wow, what an amazing place. And I came back from New York City, a 15-year-old, with this obsession with skyscrapers and wanting to be involved in the development of skyscrapers and buildings. And so naturally enough, architecture was the route that I went. And I was not an academic student in any shape or form. Like, it was really the worst in the class. Spelling, I could barely spell and all this. But I suddenly pulled up my socks because I said, I'm not going to get into architecture unless I really like study. And all of a sudden I realized with focus, I could actually achieve, higher grades and all this kind of stuff. And that was interesting kind of insight for me. And anyway, sure enough, I got into architecture. I did first year. And then in second year, my dad died. My dad went on a trip to Africa. He was in, Zimbabwe. He went to Zimbabwe, and when he was there, he got sick. And he was unable to recover from his illness and basically died a couple of months later. And so thrown in the deep end my dad had been involved in business. He had a couple of different interests and things. And my mother and myself and my sister and my brother were much younger. And so it was like, roll up the sleeves, Gavin, you're now involved in the family business. And I had always wanted to do my own thing, but basically the choice was taken away from me. I had to get involved in the family business. And so I started in the family business, started learning about the property industry, but I always wanted to do this architecture as well. And by combining the two, I started finding that I was able to buy sites and develop them myself, and to do stuff for myself, but using the stuff I was learning through my family connection. And the timing was just perfect. Even though I was only a young guy, I was exposed to borrowing money, buying property and doubling in value, like the early 2000s, 2001, 2002. The Irish market was just absolutely on fire. They called it the Celtic Tiger. And I was buying property, and within a year, you were able to sell it at like nearly double what you paid for it, and things like that. And I just happened to fall into that at the exact right time. And in the space of just 3 years, I went from like a small little house that I had bought to having multiple developments on the go. And I was borrowing a lot of money, but I had built up this portfolio at about 65 million in value. And I was living a very lavish lifestyle. I was traveling first class everywhere. I had bought a penthouse in New York City. I had bought a villa in Spain. I had an apartment in Spain. And I was just living, and I had this big mansion in Dublin, living my best life at 35 years of age.
Wow.
Everybody, when you're in that environment and you're having that kind of success, like everything I touched was turning to gold, your ego can get the better of you, and you start to kind of think that you are infallible. And that is exactly what happened to me. I started to believe that I had it all figured out. I had made so much money in such a short space of time. I thought another 5 years from now, like my portfolio will hit 100 million. It'll keep on going. I'm going to be stinking rich. And so
by the age of 40.
By the age of 40, I'm going to absolutely have it made. And so why delay the lifestyle? Like, why not just have it now? And so started to enjoy all of the trappings of wealth by living off of the debt that the banks were able to kind of give you very easily. So buy something for $1 million, sell it for $2.5 million like a year later. And it was that easy at the time. 2008 came along just after I had committed to the biggest project that I had ever done, 42 million for a shopping center in the south of Spain. And I hadn't paid for it yet. I had committed to it. I had raised money from investors. I was putting in the lion's share, but the investors were backing me up. And I had money from the Royal Bank of Scotland, and I went all in on this development in the south of Spain. This was going to be the big one that got me to the next level, we'll say.
To the 100 mil.
To the 100 million. And then a few months after I signed the deal, Lehman Brothers collapses. And the whole 2008 financial crash just happened whilst I was all committed, all in on this thing, and I had not a single tenant ready to go into this thing. That was all something I was going to do later. And so the whole everything, the wheels came off the wagon. And I ended up, within 2 years, I was 16 million negative. Tough. And the worst thing about it is, if it was just 16 million, that would be okay. But it's the collateral damage that it does to you in that period. So,
can you explain that?
What I mean is, so my net worth was 16 million negative, but in the process of that, my family home in Ireland, the big mansion that I had that my now ex-wife was very proud of at the time, the bank went and took that on us. I ended up in such debt that I was stressed all the time. My marriage didn't survive because of the stress levels and everything like that. I started having to commute. I was actually coming here to Dubai in order to find work, to try to kind of keep the wheels moving. And I was trying to find investors to jump in and support my project in Spain. Just everything. The wheels just came off. I went from all this wealth and everything going really well to being 16 million negative, divorced, lost the family home, all of my income gone to zero. asking my brother, can you give me a bailout? Can you actually let me move into your rental property that you're not using it? And I'll live there rent-free until I get myself back.
I've heard this story so many times, and every time it's like, damn, man, that must have hurt.
It hurts so much because the humiliation, like when you go from hero to zero,
and everyone knows that,
and everyone it's there to see from the flashy car being gone and the lifestyle, and there's no covering it up. You know, you had the big mansion that's gone now, and there was even articles being written in the newspapers about me, and they were saying, you know, nobody feels sorry for Gavin Gallagher, whose house got sold this weekend, and this kind of thing written in the newspapers. So anyway, pretty humiliating time, but it was only when you're, you know, it's when they say it's the darkest hour is just before dawn, and it was that exact thing. I just remember reflecting on, how did I get myself into this situation? And prior to that, I had blamed everybody else. I had said, like, it was Lehman Brothers, it was those pesky banks that lent me all that money, it was those guys asking for it back then at the lowest point of the market, it's the guys that are forcing me to sell my property at the lowest point. All of that stuff was why I was in this. It wasn't anything to do with me. I was taking none of the blame. And then I suddenly went, hold on a second. Who borrowed the money? Who signed the papers for those loans? Who made the decision to buy the property in Spain? Who made all these decisions, Gavin? The banks didn't force you to do that.
Everything was you.
You did it all yourself.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you move on to taking responsibility, which I'm so glad you've come to, because obviously, you know, I talk about this a lot. Just to go back to what you're talking about being at the lowest point. We spoke about something before. I think we were just chatting in a coffee shop. And I asked you a question, and it was, did you ever think of tapping out? As in taking your own life? Because a lot of people, even at 1 million negative, would kill themselves because they don't know how to deal with the stress. And I think that it's worth sharing why you did not consider that. Because for anyone listening that's going through a challenge and is thinking about that, or maybe in the future will face a challenge and thinks about that, can you share why you did not? Because I think it's so incredibly important what it does.
Well, I remember at the lowest point, I remember when everything was really in the shit, and I remember thinking to myself, I can understand why somebody would do that. I was in the frame of mind, like, where everything's so negative, that I can imagine if somebody was in this same situation as I find myself now, that would be a legitimate exit that they would see as a possibility. What really pushed me back, I mean, I had been involved in a really sort of terrible thing that happened to my uncle. And my uncle and we were involved in this family business together, and there was a celebration, and we took all of the professionals that were involved in this development that we built. We took them on a bit of a junket weekend, and we flew down to the south of Ireland, and we rented out a whole hotel, and everybody was there, all of the engineers, architects, everybody like that. We had a great old party, and we got in the plane and we flew back to Dublin. We got off the plane, we congratulated everyone on what a great party we had, and my uncle went straight to a hotel check-in and hung himself in the hotel room. And I didn't know about this until the following day when the police called my phone, because it just happened to be a speed dial in his number, or in his phone. And they asked me they showed me his passport and said, who is this? And I said, that's my uncle. And he says, I'm sorry to say that he's dead. And at that point he said, now, if you wouldn't mind, we would like you to come with us now to his home, and you can explain to his family that
As a 27-year-old.
I was 27, and I was being asked to go and meet my aunt-in-law and explain that her husband had just committed suicide. And I just was like, you what? You want me to do that? And anyway, long story short, I saw firsthand what that decision he made did to his family.
Everyone else.
He had 4 children, like great kids. They were only very young. Like the eldest was 12, I think, and all of this. And I can remember just seeing that with my own two eyes and just thinking, like, how could he have done that? Like, how bad could it be that somebody would do that and leave these great kids behind, you know? And so that was really impactful on me. And anything I went through after that, I compared it to that date, and I said to myself, I'm not going to do that to my kids,
to my family.
And so that was a big part of why I think I have possibly some inner strength that kind of helps me push through those things. The other thing that helped me, and it's funny, like when you reflect on these things, I was just talking to my wife, my new wife, Ilga, and we had a conversation in the car just the other day, and she was saying, you know, you went through such a difficult time, like how did you survive that when so many people kind of find it difficult? And I was saying that, you know, she has a lot to do with it, because I was going through hell financially and all that, but it was around about that moment that I had just met her. And when you're in that thing where you're in this kind of the honeymoon period of a relationship, you've just met somebody, you're head over heels, all of that was really a buoyant time. And it was kind of like, this is great, like I have something to look forward to. All of the day, like you spend 8 hours battling with banks and debtors and all that kind of stuff and creditors, and everything is all going to shit, but then you come home and you've got somebody that's there to kind of back you up and support you and take care of you and stuff. And that made a big difference. Definitely I would put a lot down to the support that I got from Ilga.
Wow. Well, I'm sure she knows that already, but hopefully she hears you say it again.
I might just send her the video.
Yeah. And, you know, you and I spoke about this outside of the podcast studio, just to have support from someone. Actually, we just spoke about it again before going live, is just, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Well, it's very hard to deal with what you're dealing with if you don't have some sort of refuge. And how you get that refuge, like that, whether you can get that from your kids or whether you can get that from family. But if you don't have it, it's a pretty lonely place. And certainly, I think if you were dealing with all of these negative things going on, and on top of that, you had an empty house, and that would have been pretty hard, you know. Yeah.
Do you think you would have made it if you had an empty house and no one to support you?
I think just what I went through, I don't think I would have put my family through it. My mother, you know, like.
Thank you so much for sharing that and being so vulnerable and open. And the reason why I also wanted to go back to that was because, I mean, most people know my father took his life. And, I mean, that just fucked everyone up for a long, I mean, I'm talking many years. And it doesn't matter what I go through in life. I would rather be homeless with nothing, living on a beach, looking for scraps, than put my family through what my father put us through. No, not a bad word to say about my father. He was just a broken man. But I witnessed, like you, that suicide is preventing the pain of one person and creates pain and suffering for many people.
You're passing it on. Yeah.
You're passing on the pain. Oh, that's powerful. So you hit rock bottom, you realize that no one got you there, you started taking responsibility. Then what?
Well, I tell you what really helped a lot from a mindset perspective is getting into fitness. And it's funny how just, like, first of all, this is another thing that I was talking with Ilga about the other day. We were talking about how men in particular, what they tend to do is they wrap their ego up in around their financial success. And I was just thinking to myself that that's a real big mistake, because your financial success, if your ego is wrapped up in that too much, then some sort of a hurdle that you come across that can knock you out, that can really dent your ego, and that can actually harm people. And so if you're going to wrap yourself up in finance, you expect ups and downs. And if you have a more rounded experience, whether that's fitness or whether that's your family or whatever, at least they can't take that from you as well.
100%.
And so I started getting into adventure racing. I started doing these kind of cross-country events where you're climbing over obstacles and going across mud lakes and all this kind of stuff. It was great fun, and I got a lot out of that. And then I was doing triathlons prior to that. And then I got into burpee challenges. You know about my burpees. I did 1,000 burpees in one go.
In how long time?
It's funny, I've done it 4 times now.
You've done 1,000 4 times?
Yeah, I've done it. So the first time I did it,
recall that.
the first time I did it for charity, and it took me 2 hours and 37 minutes. The second time was a year later, and I did it in 1 hour, 58 minutes. So I broke the 2-hour mark, and I was like, yes. The next time I did it in 1:52.
That's insane.
And then the most recent time I did it in 1:48.
And to give you a bit of context, like I've done 1,000 and it took me like just under 3 hours. And it's just a machine.
The thing is
I blame my height.
A lot to do with it, yes.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is I've injured myself lately because I started doing a lot again recently, but I think I overdid it, and I have a kind of a tear somewhere in my shoulder that's giving me a lot of discomfort at the moment. So it's back to running at the moment. But I always try to do something first thing in the morning. I find it very hard to do it in the afternoon. I feel my energy drops off, and I also have usually some sort of work commitment. So first thing in the morning, have my morning routine, get up at 5, go down, have a coffee, do some journaling, meditation, and then out and go for a run or do the burpees or some sort of calisthenics.
I had a client this morning that I met at his house in Dubai, and he asked me, do you always exercise in the morning? And I said, yes. And that's the reason why I always exercise. Because most people, 99.999% of people, fitness is not your main priority. It's your business, your family, your job, etc. So why put it at the end of the day when you're now tired, lethargic, want to go home, etc.? You are just setting yourself up for failure. Why not just admit that fitness filters into every other area of my life, but fitness itself isn't a high priority? So just get it done. Get it out of the way. Then you don't need to think about it all day. You know, many people want to get fit, and they spend most of their day, every day, thinking, I must go to the gym, I must run, I must work out, I must do yoga. You can just stop thinking that by just working out first thing in the morning. And all of a sudden, you just don't need to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Just get it done. And the thing is and it's funny, my wife has started exercising, and she says it's your influence, Gavin. Now it's been a few years.
Why is that funny? Because she wouldn't have done it before?
She was not interested, and I used to come in from the run and the endorphins like flowing through me. And the funny thing is she notices things about me, and she would say something like, if I'm grouchy in any way or something, Gavin didn't do his run today. And she would it was really noticeable that anytime I didn't do a run, she would pick up on the vibe. My energy would be off.
Your energy is different.
And so recently she started getting into running, and she started, she did every day a run, and she came in, she goes, you know what, I totally get now why you run. She says, I feel this energy. And she was explaining.
I hope every single client of mine watches this clip, because it's not about the running, it's what it gives you. Yeah,
you just feel the endorphins and the energy and all that kind of stuff. And so she's finally, the other day, she was just like, I have to. So the other morning, first time ever, she got up before me and she went down and she was working out. And I could hear the furniture moving around and stuff. And I was like, she's downstairs exercising.
You must have been like, yes, come on, here we go.
Let's go.
So you came out of this challenge, out of this valley, you started climbing towards the peak again. What did that look like? What did you do? And where are you now?
Well, it's funny, you gotta kind of bury your pride, first of all. So when I was on my way back, I was coming from absolute zero. Like the banks had stripped away everything. I didn't have any income whatsoever. And so it was a very desperate place. And I can remember I had kids that were, I had my daughters are now grown up. I have a 20-year-old, an 18 and a 16. But at the time, they were kind of 10 years younger than that. So 6, 8, 10. And I was trying to bring in enough money just to kind of keep things going. Because we were separated, so I was in a different household. And I went back to my family business that I had left 10 years or 8 years earlier, when I went off to Spain, living the high life and all that kind of stuff, because everything was going so well. I went back to them and I just said, guys, I am on my knees. I need some sort of a job in the business. And They could have turned around and said, F you, Gavin, you turned your back on us, you walked away. They didn't. They brought me back in, and things aligned in a certain way. Somebody had just decided to quit and go off and do his own thing, and I stepped in and I took over that role. And that was the beginning. I just had enough income coming in just to kind of like stabilize things. And then I started thinking, okay, we went through various different, I was looking at different projects. I remember student housing was something that was happening in the UK for years, but the Irish market, student housing, wasn't something. So I started some projects looking at that. Just, you need that stability just to be able to look at anything else. If you're wondering where the next paycheck is going to come from, then you're in a very kind of panicky anxiety. There's all this. There's no creativity, and so it's very hard to look at any project and feel like there's an opportunity here, because it's like, I'm not going to get money out of this in the next month, so I can't do it.
You're acting from desperation, not inspiration.
Exactly. So first of all, you got to stabilize the ship, and that was what I did, and that took a bit of swallowing one's pride. Here was me traveling first class and all this kind of stuff, and then suddenly you're going in, can I have some work, please? So that was humiliating, but at the same time necessary. And then what happened was, it's funny, I got into that job and I did it for a couple of years, and then COVID happened. And when we were in COVID, we were in this lockdown period, and it was crazy. I sort of thought, you know what, this feels a little bit like when we were in lockdown and everyone was panicking about like what's going to happen. Restaurants are shutting down, hotels are not taking in guests, like the whole world was locked down pretty much. And I remember thinking to myself, this feels like 2008 again, and I have some insights now. I've been through this. And so I switched on my podcast for the first time, and I said, hey guys, we're in the middle of lockdown, and here's what I think is going to happen. Here's how I think it's going to play out. And I basically gave my insights and my backstory about what I've gone through and stuff. And I did about 3 episodes, and I published them and thought nothing of it. And the next minute I started getting messages from people on LinkedIn saying, Gavin, that was super helpful. Like, thank you. And it started coming in, and I started to get addicted to this feeling. You were saying on my podcast about being in service of others. I felt that energy from helping others, and from kind of just, all I was doing was sharing what I had been through. But it's funny how that can be quite therapeutic.
What worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, and I was like, here's what you're going to be thinking, but here's what's actually going on. And here's, somebody's offering you a low price for your property, and you're feeling like this is some sort of an insult. It's not an insult. The guy is just making you an offer, and the market is low. So either you need the money and you have to accept that offer, and it's not an insult. It's just where you are. Or you dig in and you decide, I'm going to hold on, and I'm going to, if you can hold on, hold on. But people get all emotional about those moments, and they're not being a mature investor. They're being driven by emotions like a teenager. And it's kind of like, that person, like that, the property's worth a lot more than that, and you get all emotional and stuff. So I just started sharing my insights, that I had been offered so much for my property. I thought it was an insult, turned my nose up at it. 6 months later, I'm offering the property at half that price because the market is collapsing. So I was explaining these things, and that turned into about 35 podcasts before I had you on, 47 podcasts. I think I had Daniel Priestley on. And then I went on, and today I'm at 227 podcasts.
That's just incredible.
And what's interesting is it turned into coaching. I had people saying, do you coach? And I hadn't even thought about coaching. But that is now something that I'm doing on a regular basis, and I really enjoy that. So it's funny how it's kind of, there's a journey.
Not only do you enjoy it, but I obviously know you personally, but you make in a month sometimes double to triple of an average Irish or UK annual wage, and you're doing something that you love, and that's really powerful. And I love what you shared before about, to go back to, I can't remember when it was you were interviewing me, I was talking about doing what you love. That's the greatest success, because when you do what you love, you're happy, and there's no greater success than happiness in your everyday life. But you mentioned before about not getting emotional, and what makes you so good at what you do is not just your mindset, your habits, your consistency, your discipline, the way you serve your people, but it's they can relate to you, and they feel that you get them. Because yes, if they're making emotional decisions or freaking out, someone random can tell them, oh, you shouldn't be like that. And like, why should I listen to you? But you're like, I was 16 million in debt.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, don't be emotional about not getting, 50K extra on your house or something. Like, I've been there. I could have got emotional. I didn't, or whatever. And this is how it will serve you. So there's massive relatedness there, and you can connect with them on a deep level, especially for people that have rarely gone through the wars.
It's funny you say that. It's all about whether or not you respect where the advice is coming from. Because I found, like, I've had people saying, Gavin, if you go back to when you made the big, the bad decisions around certain investments, and you took that fateful decision to buy in Spain, if somebody had told you don't do that, would you have listened? And I was like, I had multiple people tell me not to do it, and I ignored them because I was like, dude, I've just made like millions in the last couple of years. Like, what have you done? So like, I know what I'm doing. Who are you
to tell me?
Yeah, like I've got the big ego, and I've got the success to show that, how good I am at what I do. And so that was there. Whereas I think if my dad had been alive, I probably would have listened to him.
What do you think he would have said?
I think he would have slapped me over the back of the head and told me to cop on to myself. It's like, because by that stage I was living the high life, and I think he would have been not disappointed, but I think he would have kind of like been taking me aside and say, you do know this is short term.
Be cautious.
We've seen this before. And it's funny, like when I say that to people, they kind of go, oh yeah, well that was 2008. But history repeats itself. Just in the last 2 or 3 years, we had everyone on crypto. It's going to the moon. And you had people burned in Celsius and FTX and all of these cryptocurrency things that went. Now, of course, Bitcoin's doing amazing at the moment.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin will possibly go through another one of these things where suddenly something happens and it falls off. And it's all fine if you've got the resources to stay in there. But a lot of people borrow money to make investments like that. And if you buy at 80,000 and you've borrowed money to buy at 80,000 and it falls to 60,000, you're now 20 in the hole. Like, it's fine if it's sitting there and it's cash, but if you borrow that money, you're in a different position. And people do get greedy, and they think, you know what, I'm going to borrow the money to do that. And that's the bit that I kind of caution people. It's like, if you're playing with cash, fine, but if you're playing with debt, you're magnifying all the losses. So you got to be really careful.
That's great advice. So now you are still working in your family business, supporting there. You are coaching, you are speaking. I'm still waiting for you to write a book. You have a mastermind or community. You have this podcast with hundreds of episodes. A big part of your life today, and has been for as long as I've known you, has been fitness. And you spoke about it right in the beginning of this episode. But I just want to go back to that. Like, how much of a role has fitness played in your life in terms of who you are every day? Like, how much is fitness a part of that, a part of your identity?
Well, it's funny.
And the benefits.
It is one of the legs of the stool, we'll say, if you consider what it is that keeps you stable, keeps your life kind of balanced and stuff like that. I talk about, there's three core legs of your stool, maybe the fourth one, but your health is the first one. Your wealth is the next one. Your relationship is the next one. And then you could call it happiness or, whatever, purpose or something like that. But if you are, I know a lot of people that are super successful financially, and they're making hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever it might be. And that's great. You get all these outward affirmations. People are saying, patting you on the back, you're so successful, you're so brilliant. And then you go up a set of stairs and you're out of breath at the top of it. And, first of all, I hate the feeling of weakness like that. If ever I go for a run and if I'm out of breath after 10 minutes, I'm like, man, you are out of shape. You need to get yourself back in the gym. You need to get yourself back running frequently. And I remember during COVID, I got up to doing 1.5 to 2 hours running a day because there was this 5 kilometer exclusion zone essentially. We couldn't go outside of 5K. And I was thinking, but I like to run longer distances than 5K. But then I thought, hold on a second. If I do a circle from where I live, that's actually about 15K, the perimeter, as long as I'm not more than 5K.
Exactly.
So I created this big circle and I basically mapped it. And I said, okay, I can run that whole route and I'm never going to be more than 5K from my home. But it's like a 2-hour run. And so I started doing that and I got really, really fit. And I felt so good about that. So that's the first thing. Then your wealth is important as well. If you ignore that and then you're struggling to make ends meet and stuff like that, that's obviously stressful. You're not being a provider for your family, so you don't feel good about yourself. There's all of that. So your health critical, your wealth critical. Now, you have your health and your wealth in great shape. What if your partner is screaming at you when you get home? Things are not good. That is another part of it. And a lot of people they've got the fitness dialed in, they've got the health dialed in, but in order to and their wealth dialed in order to achieve that, they often take their relationships for granted.
Yeah.
And so you go home and it's like, as a friend of mine used to joke, you get picture but no sound. And he used to joke about this, and that he knows he was in the doghouse when he got picture and no sound. And the thing is are you doing that? You have to be consciously aware. Are you showing up for your partner, your spouse, whatever it might be? Are you actually going home and showing them some gratitude for what they do for you and things like that? And it's so easy to ignore that. And then the funny thing is your health is dialed in, your wealth is dialed in. If that relationship is broken and you're going through like stress and shouting matches and all that kind of stuff, the other stuff will fall off pretty quickly as well, because it's the three of them are essential to kind of holding it all together. And after you've got those three nicely dialed in, then I guess the next thing is just whether you feel like you're living in your values, as you would say, or your purpose. And I think that's down to kind of happiness and whether or not you're happy with what you do. I don't want a job that I hate going to, even if it pays me $1 million a year. And I feel like, God, I hate this. Like, this sucks my energy. That is not the job that I want. So you're not happy. So you got to find, okay, how can I maintain the wealth but not have the energy sucking kind of activity? And so that's the journey that you have to go on to try to figure that one out. And it's not easy because, there's not an instruction manual that says if you want this is the job you get. You have to go out and figure that out.
You've turned to coaching. You've done coaching with me, coaching with other people. It's people that don't really understand coaching, because a lot of people that have never engaged in a coach. What's been the benefit of coaching in your life, coaching others and being coached?
Well, let's see. In terms of what I get coaching others, it's just first of all, I feel valuable because I've got all these insights. They were hard-won insights. Like for me, I can share the stories of success and people are inspired by that, but I can also share the stories of this is what happened when I was 16 million negative, and that's like a cautionary tale, and they also want to hear that. So for me, I feel like I'm being valuable sharing my insights, and I say, do you know what, the reason that happened, I've reflected on all this, the reason that happened is this. A certain amount of it is me therapeutically reviewing my own mistakes so that I don't go down that road. And the best way to learn is to teach others.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. In terms of what I've gained from it, as I often find, you can go out there and you can try to figure it out yourself, and it might take you 10 years to make the right moves and figure out where all the chess pieces go, or the jigsaw pieces. Somebody else has gone and done it, and you can go and immediately tap into that mind. And so that's essentially what coaching does. And so somebody like, I joined, you and I, what we have in common is Daniel Priestley as our mutual friend. I joined Daniel's KPI accelerator in 2019.
Which I've done as well.
Which you did prior to me, yeah.
Which was amazing.
And the thing is like, I had no idea. All I knew was that I enjoyed making content, and I had a social media profile that was very small, but that I wanted it bigger. I kind of, what would you say? I kind of felt envy towards people that had larger social media followings. Not envy in a bad way, but just I kind of wanted that. I wanted to know, how could I achieve that? And I joined Daniel's thing in order to kind of figure that out. He explained how you can become a key person of influence. And that opened my entire world up, because prior to that, I had no idea that this is what people do in order to put themselves in these positions. Like, I remember he asked a question one day, who here, there was like 65 of us in the room, who here would like to be an international speaker? Who would like to be paid to speak at a conference and, like, you know, talk around the world? And I was like, put my hand up straight away. And a couple of other people did, but I was sitting up at the front, and he goes, Gavin, so you do. So do you have a website, a personal website? I said, no. And he goes, so how do people know that you're a speaker? And I'm like, well, they don't. And he goes, but you want to do it, don't you? Yes. So you think people are going to guess that maybe I should ask this guy, like, to speak at my conference sometime? Like, unless you're producing something that states that I am a speaker, I speak on these topics, I want to speak, please inquire about my speaking. That's, nobody is ever going to ask you. So whatever you want, you have to put it out there publicly. And a lot of the time people feel this kind of imposter syndrome, and they're kind of like, I could never do that. But if you harbor that desire deep down, then you have to go and get outside of the comfort zone and put yourself out there.
And now you've done hundreds of courses. You do video courses, a podcast, video podcast, YouTube videos, Instagram. You know, your Instagram has been blowing up this year, from like 1,000 to 10,000 followers. What are you at now?
Yeah, it's funny. It's slowed down recently, but I did 8,000 followers in 2 months.
That's insane.
And it was insane. In fact, one video hit 300,000 views, and it is responsible for about 4,000 people following me. That one video.
We talk a lot about purpose. In your coaching, in your podcasts, in you showing up in your own personal development, or on your social media rather than in, what's your purpose now? Because you've had many chapters in your life. The two main prior chapters were make as much money as possible in terms of purpose. The next one was survive. But now you've got into a more spiritual place. You're not just about the money, and you don't need to focus on surviving anymore. I'm interested to know, what's your purpose today? I
tried to fulfill a promise that I made to my dad. It's funny, I've been reflecting on this. So my dad died on the 23rd of November, 1993. And he was 45 years of age. And when he died, it was very sad. He had been a guy in the prime of his life, and then cut down by this illness that took him in the space of about 3 months. And to experience that, first of all, was a horrible thing. But I can remember standing at the hospital bed, and he just sort of looked at me and he just said, "Make me proud." And it's powerful, even when I say it, like I can feel my voice sort of breaking up. And I said I will, and it's that solemn promise. It's funny, I actually created, using ChatGPT, I created this like piece of prose, and it goes, you know, that solemn promise on that November day, you know, oh,
that's the thing you send me.
Yeah. And it's basically, it's my promise to my dad that I would make him proud, number one, but to live in my values, to be a role model for my kids, to show up the way I want to show up in terms of my health, my fitness, my wealth, and my relationship. And it's really just to be that rounded version of myself that I see myself. You know, I see myself as, we jokingly we call it about the galvanizer. I see myself as the athlete, the galvanizer. I see myself as a fabulous family man I have 5 children. I try to be the best husband to my wife. I have a desire to be a business leader, a thought leader in the real estate space, and I do that through my coaching. and through my social media posts about different aspects of real estate. And that's what I kind of want is those things together. I would like some freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of financially, freedom of money, we'll say. Those three types of freedom are pretty essential. And if I don't have them, I would feel like I'm not living to the full potential that I have.
That's awesome, man. Beautiful. What is your Instagram?
Gavin J. Gallagher. J for James. And I go, pretty much everything is Gavin J. Gallagher.
Your podcast, Behind the Facade?
Yes, it's called Behind the Facade. And the reason I came, I talk about mindset, I talk about investment, I talk about real estate. And the reason I called it Behind the Facade is obviously a facade is a building.
What you see up front.
But it's also, what you have going on behind is what matters.
Amazing. What's one thing you're grateful for and one thing you're currently celebrating?
I am grateful for being here in Dubai with you in person. It's funny, we talked about this a few months ago and here we are making it happen. So that's great.
And it almost didn't happen.
Yeah, it's funny how just a couple of days made a difference. And then what am I celebrating? I think I'm celebrating my relationship, my wife, my children, my 5 kids. I celebrate them.
Amazing, man. Bro, it's been such a pleasure. Let's go to dinner. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Delighted to be here, JP. Thank you again.
Awesome.
All right, that there is my full conversation with JP. Now, there's 2 groups of people who will probably be watching this. Group number 1 is going to be the people looking for property investment lessons and ideas and strategies. And then group number 2 will be the people who are curious in the human element, the story, what happened to me, what happened to my family, all that kind of stuff. So I want to address group 2 first. We covered some pretty heavy topics there. In particular, the story about my uncle's suicide. And so I want to say, if any part of that landed close to home, then please don't sit with that alone. I've shared some telephone numbers for support down in the description below. Talking it out can help a lot, so I would recommend you do that. Now, for those of you in the first group, something that I would like you to take away is when I had a portfolio valued at 65 million, I very much thought of that number as who I was. You know, it was a success metric, I guess you'd call it. And then when the number reversed and went negative 16 million, I thought I was that number too. And, you know, you feel dreadfully, you just feel dreadful. It's a very tough place to be. But the reality is both of those feelings were wrong. The portfolio was never the asset. The asset was the ability to build the portfolio, the knowledge, the expertise, the network. You cannot repossess those items. And so if right now I'm speaking to you and you're leveraged up to the eyeballs, you're chasing a number, hear me when I tell you, markets are cyclical. Debt does not care what your plans are. And the discipline that you're going to be building during the good years is what's going to carry you through the bad years. So be very careful. If this story was worth an hour of your time, I would ask maybe you'd hit the subscribe button. Did I earn it for you? It costs nothing, but it does genuinely help with the channel and get this video out in front of the people who might need it. Even better, leave a comment down below on what was the most impactful part of the conversation that I had today. And if you do happen to be an active real estate investor and you'd like to have access to the many frameworks I developed when I was coming back and rebuilding, then there is a link below to my Elite Property Accelerator. And have a look when you're ready. There's no rush at all because the markets are going to do what they're going to do. Take care of yourself and go make somebody proud.